Hey Stallions, here is your study guide for Europe. Remember your test is tomorrow, so please study and use this video to help you do so. So I'm going to go ahead and go over every single question. Please feel free to pause, rewind, fast forward to whatever section that you need. We're going to go ahead and start off with the first section, which is labeling the countries. So remember on your test, you're going to be given this alphabet chart so you don't have to spell the entire country's name inside of the country's borders. You just have to put the letter. So the first one is Belarus. So that is letter A. I'm going to go ahead and mark A where that country is. Next one is France. France is located towards the north of Spain. So that is right here. It's right beside the English Canal. And I skipped B, which is Finland. So I'm going to go ahead and mark Finland. It's right beside to the west of Russia. D is Germany. Germany is right beside France. And my next one is Greece. Greece has all those islands, so it's on the southern part, right beside the Mediterranean Sea. There is Greece. It's E. My next one is Norway. Norway's towards the north. It is right beside the North Sea, so Norway's right there. My next one is, where am I at? Norway? I'm sorry, I put an N for Norway. Please do not do that on your test. Norway starts with an N, but that's not the key. Do not do what I just did. Make sure you follow the key, and Norway is F. Next one, Poland. Poland is located right beside Germany and in between Germany and Belarus. So Poland is G, so we're going to put a G there. Next one, we're going to go ahead and do H for Portugal. Portugal is to the west of Spain. So H is right here. That looks ugly. Let me redo that H. H right here. After Portugal, we're going to have to identify Italy. Remember, Italy looks like a boot. So I'm going to put an I for Italy. Next, Russia. Russia is bicontinental or transcontinental. So J for Russia. It's toward the most eastern part of Europe. Spain is right beside Portugal. I'm going to put a K. It's toward the southwest part of Europe. And then we have Sweden. Sweden's in between Norway and Finland. So I'm going to put an L for Sweden. We have Turkey. So Turkey is located, if I look real quick. Now, Turkey's kind of tough because Turkey is also transcontinental, but if we're only looking at the one part that's a part of Europe, it's located in this region. I'm trying to put an arrow. It doesn't look that great. Right here. This is Turkey, that little section. So Turkey's key is M, so this is going to be M located right there. Next one, you have the Ukraine. The Ukraine's right beside Russia as well, so that's an N for the Ukraine. And then the last one that we have to know is the United Kingdom. And remember, that's also in Northern Ireland. So that is O. So that is the countries. Let's go ahead and do the physical features, which is the second section of your test. I'm going to do it in purple. So remember with the physical features, you actually have to draw on the map. So if it's a mountain range, you have to show exactly where the mountain range starts and ends. Now, the first one on yours is the Alps. Remember, the Alps kind of straddles the border countries where Italy is at. So if you do the little mountain range like so, and then I'm going to do an arrow that shows me that that is the Alps. Pardon my handwriting. Next one, I have the Black Sea. The Black Sea is directly south of the Ukraine and north of Turkey. So it's where this big arrow is. So I'm going to put Black Sea. I apologize, I do not have a stylus, so I'm writing with my finger and it's not turning out that great. Next one, Carpathian Mountains. The Carpathian Mountains straddle a couple of countries. So first it's Slovakia, and then it goes to the Ukraine and Romania. So if you look, it's about right here. About. And I'm going to do an arrow as well. Actually, let me do the arrow to the opposite side. Carpathian Mountains. English Channel is in between England or the UK, and also we have France, so it's in between here. That is the English Canal. I'm just going to put EC on my study guide, but please write English Channel on yours for your test tomorrow. Mediterranean Sea is in between Europe and Africa. So the Mediterranean Sea is towards the southern part of Europe. Let's see. Awesome. Next one is Mount Vesuvius, so that is located towards the southern part of Italy. So if you put a little mountain range right here, a little mountain indicator, and then that is going to be Mount. I understand that this is hard to read, guys. I get it, but hopefully that you're following along with my lecture so you can go ahead and see as well. So remember, that's the only active volcano in the moment in Europe, or at the moment. Next one is the North Sea. So the North Sea is in between the UK and Norway. So this right here is the North Sea. I'm going to abbreviate that. Make sure you spell it out on your test, though. Strait of Gibraltar, which is kind of hard because we are missing the outline of Africa. So in order for it to be a strait, it needs to be a piece of water cutting through two pieces of land. So that is in between Africa and Spain. So this is the Strait of... this looks horrible, sorry. Gibraltar. Next one, Ural Mountains. Ural Mountains is the border. Well, it creates the border for Europe and Russia. So if you look, I put my little mountain symbols, and that is going to be the Ural Mountains. Straight down. And then my last one is the Volga River. Now, the Volga River actually feeds from the Caspian Sea, and it goes up towards the north. So you just have to estimate where it's about. So the Volga River is towards the middle of Russia. So this is the Volga River. Okay, I know if you look at the end product, there's just a bunch of red and a bunch of purple, but hopefully you followed along so you know exactly how to mark it on your test. Okay, let's move on to the next section. So the next section is talking about the Holocaust, and it's asking what exactly was the Holocaust, includes some people and groups involved. So remember, the Holocaust took place during World War II, and then you had Germany in the main front of that war, and they were led by Adolf Hitler. Now, Adolf Hitler was trying to persecute the Jewish people, and not just the Jews, but other minorities as well, but specifically the Jewish population, and he created some camps, concentration camps, death camps that he placed the Jewish people in, and that was known as the Holocaust, where you had several Jews that lost their lives due to being persecuted by Germany, and which is led by Adolf Hitler. So you do need to know about the Holocaust, when it took place, who were the people in charge, all the little details that you can include. Next one, push factor. So remember, a push factor is pushing you out of a country. So they can take many different push factors can take place. Wars, and then we talked about the civil war in Syria. That was a huge one. Drought, famine, extreme religious persecution. So all of those are push factors. It's whenever people had to leave their original country because they have no other choice. So that is what a push factor is. Now, a pull factor is the opposite. A pull factor is what attracts migrants to a receiving country, and there's many factors why they choose to go to these countries. Those are known as push factors. So whether it be a higher standard of living, more security, better jobs, family can be a push factor or a pull factor, So those different things, something that attracts a person or a people to a new country, those are all pull factors. They're pulling them in. Let me go back real quick to the Holocaust, because I did mention Adolf Hitler, but I don't think I mentioned the Nazi Party. He was actually in charge of the Nazi Party, so make sure that you mention that as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about immigration. Immigration, remember the letter that it starts with. So if I'm talking about, first let's do immigration. So that is with an E. The word that we told you to remember was exit. They are exiting their country. So they are leaving their country of origin and they're moving away. So the example that we gave was in Syria. They had the civil war that is going on at the moment. So if they're leaving Syria, they're emigrating from Syria because they're leaving. So make sure that word from is emigration. Now, if I'm talking about immigration, it starts with I, they're going into the country. So they're going in a country, the new country that they go to, they're considered immigrants. So again, if we go back to the Syria example, they're emigrating from Syria because they're leaving it. But if they choose to go, for example, to any country in Europe, they're considered an immigrant to Europe. So from immigration to immigration. Next couple questions, we're going to be talking about the Renaissance era. So we talked about the Renaissance. We did a couple of stations, and we also compared and contrast how the Renaissance was similar and different from the Middle Ages. So remember, during the Middle Ages, it was also known as the Dark Ages. They thought that the individual person was not important or very important. They focused a lot on their faith, on their God. They focused a lot on their afterlife. They had little focus on learning and the arts. Now, because if you remember, not a lot of people could read back then. There was only a select few that were educated enough to be able to read. So they didn't really focus a lot on literature and just the arts in general. And whatever they did have literature or the arts, it typically was centered around religion. Now, that's different from the Renaissance. So the Renaissance, also known as the rebirth period. So if I'm coming from the age of the Middle Ages, now we're going to go ahead and transform the way we think. So now we think that the individual person is important. Now there's a lot of focus on classic literature, on different types of arts. There is a focus on life rather than the afterlife. It's also known as the age of reason, because a lot of people are now starting to educate themselves and they're trying to think for themselves. So intelligence is very high there. So now if I go into number 6 and they're asking, or number 5, I apologize, about the arts, there's different ways that the arts, if I compare the two. So remember, if we're talking about the Middle Ages, it's focused around religion. It's typically 2D. They don't usually have a lot of details. They don't focus on people or humanistic characteristics. They just focus on their most likely religion. Compared to the Renaissance, then they start to think about humanism, which is focusing on human potential. They also focus on individualism, which is also focusing on an individual's qualities, and secularism, which is also has nothing to do with religion. It's a non-religious value or concern. So the Renaissance really focuses on those 3 aspects, and their art is more 3D. They focus a lot on geometric shapes. They have a lot more detail. So it's just a lot more complex if I'm comparing the Middle Ages from the Renaissance. 6. Explain the changes that the invention of the printing press brought after the Renaissance. So again, if we talk about the printing press, it revolutionized the way that we had books. So during the Middle Ages, again, you only had a select few people that were able to read and write, and most of the books were Bibles, and it was written in Latin. The books were rare. But now I have the printing press during the Renaissance era and after. Now books are common because there's more in circulation. The church cannot contain what's being printed because there's too much of it. Books are also cheaper because they are made from paper, which is more accessible. So the printing press totally changed the way books were being printed and the way they came about. Also, if we use our vocab terms, books were not expensive due to the lack of scarcity of books, because considering that there's more books in circulation, they're not as rare, so therefore they're not as expensive and they're more common to the public. So if we're talking about number 7, what are some significant scientists and the inventors of the Renaissance era, and what were they known for? So the ones that we talked about was during the scientific observation station is we talked about Galileo, and then we also talked about Nicholas Copernicus. I probably said his name wrong, but that's okay. But they were mainly known for the way they transform astronomy. Galileo made a lot of improvements to the telescope, and Nicholas also found his theory about the universe, which was the heliocentric theory, which considered that the sun was in the center of the universe and the earth was not, which everybody thought previously, which was the geocentric theory. So it was moving away from the earth being the focal point, and then now science and hypotheses were studied, and then they made different observations, and they realized we are in fact not in the middle of the universe. It is in fact the sun, which was completely different from what we knew. And that fact also scared the church, because the church supported the geocentric theory where the earth was in the middle. So remember, they even arrested Galileo for his support of that theory of the sun being in the middle. So they charged him with heresy. So they did not find it amusing that he supported that theory, and they persecuted him as well. All right, number 8. How did literature change during the Renaissance era? So remember, during the Renaissance era, now we have more books in circulation. Now books are more common. Now more people can read and write. So the way that literature changed about as well is that we're moving away from that the Middle Ages, where they focused a lot on faith, focused a lot on their God. Now they're moving into the Renaissance era, which is focusing a lot on the individual. So most books most writers celebrated humanity, celebrated individuality, celebrated worldly topics and secular stories. Remember, secular, that's not focused around God or religion in general. So now during the Renaissance, they had all these different topics that weren't centered on religion, but centered on the people as well. Your second number 8, it's a typo, but that's fine. Second number 8 is, what are some characteristics of a market economy? So remember, when I think of economy, I think of those 3 main questions: what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce it for. And if we're talking about market, think of me, because they both start with M. So me as an individual, the individual person makes those 3 choices. The entrepreneurs, the businesses, they are the ones that determine what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets it. They make those decisions. And then that is the opposite of a command. So that brings us into number 9. Explain the characteristics of a command economy. So command, think of somebody telling you what to do and do it their way. So think of the government. If I'm part of a command economy, the government makes those calls on what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets it. So all of their decisions on that as well, the goods and services, come from the government. 10. Why do most countries have a mixed economy instead of being purely or solely command or solely market? So remember, there's nowhere in the world that's perfectly market or all the way command. They're kind of a mixture of one or the other, closer to the spectrum of market or closer to the spectrum of command. So most are mixed. So the government and the people or the individuals / businesses, they are the ones that work together to decide what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets it. So there's benefits of having a mixed economy, because you don't have the individual businesses and the individual people making all the decisions. You have regulators and the government stepping in to make sure that the product is safe, or to make sure that it's the goods and the services are up to standard. So that is why most of them are mixed. You need a kind of a mixture of both. Number 11. Explain some benefits of a country remaining in the EU or the European Union. So we talked a lot about this. Remember, there's a lot of different benefits. After World War II, they all gathered. There's just 28 countries that are in the European Union. They have a lot of benefits. Like, most of them have the same, most, not all, have the same currency. They don't have any hard borders. You could travel from country to country without being stopped. If you were going to fellow EU countries, you are able to trade freely, and there's little to no restrictions as far as trading within the EU. So there's a lot of benefits, but remember, can also be some negative aspects. If you look at the UK, how we did as well, how they're Brexit, how they're trying to leave. So there are a lot of pros, but there are some cons as well. But for right now, just focus on the benefits. And remember Brexit though too, because not everything's always a good thing. You also have to think of the negative aspects of some countries that are in there as well. All right, that's a 20-minute video. Hopefully this helped clarify some questions. Please feel free to rewind if needed. Study, 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 and good luck on your test. Have a great day. Bye.